All Indiana Politics is your premier source for Indiana politics, focusing on issues that matter to you.
I still want us to be the best in the Midwest.
We can't afford another lockdown.
Give the citizens of this country the relief they need.
Education in the state of Indiana remains priority number one.
In-depth, nonpartisan coverage.
We don't know exactly where the economy will be in January.
People are worried with good reason.
Exclusive interviews with Indiana's political leaders.
We have the resources here in the state of Indiana to care for those who are in need.
Expert analysis on critical legislation.
We need to reform those laws.
This recovery is going to take some time.
We've got to anticipate that there'll be a budget shortfall.
From Wish TV, this is All Indiana Politics Podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network.
Good morning and welcome to All Indiana Politics. I'm Garrett Bergquist in for Phil Sanchez. Israel's long-term plans for Gaza do not involve occupation. That's according to Israel's ambassador to the United States in a one-on-one interview right here on All Indiana Politics. Michael Leiter met with Governor Mike Braun and State Treasurer Daniel Elliott, as well as Jewish groups here in Indianapolis. He also toured the AM General factory in South Bend. He tells me starvation in Gaza is due to interference from Hamas, not Israeli policies. And with us now is the Israeli ambassador to the United States, Michael Leiter. Mr. Ambassador, welcome to the show. Thank you for coming in today.
Good to be with you, Garrett.
So tell me about your visit to Indianapolis. What message do you hope to convey to Central Indiana, including Central Indiana's Jewish population?
Well, I had a marvelous meeting today with the Jewish leadership of the Jewish Federation and the Jewish community. I had about 300 people come out for engagement this evening. And tomorrow I'm off to South Bend to visit with the AM General Company, which we have a long-standing relationship with and connection with the Israel Defense Force. And I want to strengthen that bond. I'll be there together with Senator Jim Banks. And then I'm back to Indianapolis to visit with your governor and your treasurer. And that'll be the day's trip out to Indiana. Great state. I'd love to be here.
Yeah. Tell me about the vibe in those meetings. What sort of conversations have you had so far?
Meetings are good. I mean, this evening we haven't had political meetings. It was basically with the Jewish community. If I had a little bit more time, I'd love to get out to some of the churches and some of the universities here. It's a very short trip. I've got to get back to Washington. But look, people are concerned, but people are also very committed to Israel and to the position that Israel has in the world. I think people are very proud of the fact that together with the United States, we degraded the Iranian threat to not only the region, but to the world. And I think that despite the fact that many in the media, many in the political realm are putting Israel's back up against the wall and are convinced that Israel's responsible for all the ills of the Middle East, the majority of people deep down, certainly the American people, know that Israel is the greatest friend that America has, certainly in the Middle East and perhaps in the world. And we're deflecting a lot of this pressure coming out of European countries for immediate recognition of a Palestinian state. This is all nonsense. It's all, it's a little background noise. Nothing more.
What exactly is the Netanyahu government's plan for Gaza at this point?
Look, the first thing we've got to do is defeat this evil. And we've got to get our hostages back. We had 255 hostages taken to date through both negotiations and military pressure. We've gotten 205 of those hostages out. There are another 50, 20 alive. They're being tortured in dungeons underneath the ground. They've been in tunnels now for almost 2 years. Those 20 we've got to get out alive, and the 30 that are dead. I mean, these people are ghoulish people. These are horrific people holding on to dead bodies in order to inflict pain and suffering and injury. So we've got to get them all out, and we've got to defeat Hamas. Hamas is a murderous organization that can't be allowed to remain standing. So the order of things is to defeat Hamas and get our hostages released, and then make sure this is the long-term plan. People who say we don't have a plan for Gaza, we're not the only ones. We've got to get everybody in the region involved in long-term plans, but our perception is that the long-term plan has to be that Hamas or anybody like Hamas, like the Islamic Jihad, anybody representing Iran, anybody representing an Iranian proxy cannot be reconstituted in Gaza. We need borders where we're protected, where our people are protected. No more jihadis on our border. That's clear.
Are there plans for a long-term post-war occupation somewhat similar to what we saw prior to 2005?
I don't think so. We don't want to occupy Gaza. We certainly have to maintain security control in Gaza. We can't give up on security. This is, Israel's a tiny country. It can fit into Indiana 4.5 times. we can't have anybody else responsible for our security. We want to take responsibility. We've never asked for American boots on the ground, European boots on the ground. We'll take care of our own security. But it has to be under very clear conditions. And one of them is that we are going to be in charge of security in Gaza. In terms of civilian life, in terms of management, in terms of administration, we don't want to get involved with that. We want our neighbors to come in with us, together with the administration here in the United States and others in Europe. Come together and let's create administration in Gaza, which is really going to serve the people and not serve Hamas. The people deserve change. Now, look, they voted for Hamas, but I think they regret it today. So we have to give them the chance to reconstitute Gaza, to rebuild Gaza, like the President Trump often says, like a Riviera of the Middle East. It can be. I mean, it sits on the Mediterranean Ocean. It could be beautiful. It could be a beautiful place. But it's not going to be a beautiful place if Hamas or people like Hamas are running it. These people are terrorists. They're murderers. They don't care about the people in Gaza. And we have to step up to the plate. Once Hamas is defeated, there is a day after, and it's a wonderful day after.
Human rights groups say that more than 200 Gazans have died from malnutrition since the war began. Will Israel allow additional food aid into Gaza?
Israel has never not allowed food aid. This is a libel against the state of Israel. Israel is facilitating a surge, and has been facilitating a surge of humanitarian aid. The problem is that Hamas takes over this aid that comes in on trucks by various UN affiliate organizations. You can actually see these films. Unfortunately, too many in the media are not showing these films. But you can see them as the trucks come in. Hamas jumps on them, masked men with guns, takes over these semi-trailers carrying the food and take it to their storage houses. They give it out to their own minions, right, to the people that are supporting Hamas, and then they sell it to the rest of the population at very high prices. So people who can't afford it are going hungry. But those pictures of the children you saw, in most cases, in almost all the cases, these are sick children with genetic diseases that are being used, manipulated by Hamas supporters around the world. The picture you saw on the front page of the New York Times was a child with cystic fibrosis or cerebral palsy. He had a genetic disease. His brother was standing right next to him. He was a healthy kid. So what are we? We're starving just one kid and not his sibling? Of course. I mean, it's just absolute nonsense. And the New York Times is absolutely guilty of libel here. They cropped that picture. And this is the kind of stuff that's being shown. Look, the BBC, we counted this actually. The BBC has reported over the past year and a half, 88 times they said that hunger and starvation is imminent. Now, how can starvation be imminent 88 times? Either it's imminent on the 8th time or the 18th time or the 38th time. It can't be imminent 88 times.
Coming up, I asked the ambassador about the death of a prominent journalist in Gaza and whether U.S. airstrikes on Iran truly destroyed that country's nuclear program. Welcome back. An Israeli airstrike killed prominent Al Jazeera journalist Anas al-Sharif toward the beginning of the month. He's one of nearly 200 journalists who have been killed in the conflict. I pressed lighter on Israel's claim al-Sharif had ties to Hamas. I want to ask about the recent incident in which 4 Al Jazeera journalists plus 2 freelancers were killed in an Israeli strike. The Israeli officials have claimed that those journalists had connections to Hamas. What evidence can you provide of that?
No, they didn't have connections to Hamas. They were operatives of Hamas, paid operatives of Hamas. Now, the fact that somebody has a job, I remember a terrorist attack when I was a youngster. And
Ambassador, what evidence can you provide right now to prove that those journalists were paid operatives of Hamas?
I'll provide you with the evidence. I mean, I didn't come prepared to the studio, with documents from our intel services, but I could present that evidence. We have the evidence. And by the way, the story has died because we've presented the evidence. They haven't continued. Everybody knows that these are Hamas operatives or Islamic Jihad operatives. I remember, as I began to say, a case where 6 of my friends were killed by terrorists, and the terrorists who shot them and threw grenades at them were school teachers. Now, the fact that you have a job and you may be a broadcaster in a studio doesn't mean that you're not, moonlighting as a terrorist, or you're a terrorist moonlighting as a journalist. So we don't kill journalists. And that's a libel against the state of Israel. All my kids served. I lost a son serving in Gaza. I know what the orders are. And the orders are that we take every extent possible in order to prevent non-combatant casualties. We don't want collateral damage. We don't want anybody who's a non-combatant killed. And our track record is the best in the world. No army in the modern history has had to contend with 450 miles of tunnels. You know what the Gaza Strip is? It's 25 miles long and 8 miles wide. And it's got 450 miles of tunnel underneath that. That's the width of the state of Pennsylvania. All right? And it's managed by people who are not only willing to have their civilians killed, but actually celebrate their death, because then they can come and say, look at mean, cruel, ghoulish Israel killing civilians. So they're the ones that are responsible for their death. They're the ones that are responsible for them being hungry. We are flooding the area. We don't want to see civilians killed. And by the way, I'd say one more thing. Where do we have a precedent where people aren't allowed out? You've got a civil war in Sudan. They can cross the border to Chad. Gaza's the only place. If they come to us and say, look, we've got a visa to go elsewhere, they come through Israel. 40,000 have left through Israel. Egypt doesn't let anybody out. Why don't we say to Egypt, hey guys, there's a problem there, let them in temporarily.
I want to turn to Iran for a minute. Based on Israel's latest intelligence, has Iran's nuclear program been destroyed as a result of those airstrikes the United States conducted, or has it merely been delayed?
The answer is yes. It's been destroyed. The President of the United States said it's been obliterated, and we don't get into etymology here. We take a stamp of approval on the President's word and say it's been obliterated. Look, Iran spent $500 billion developing their nuclear program. It's a nuclear weapon program. If you go past 3%, it's only for weapons. And you don't need to enrich uranium at all if you want a nuclear program. You know, there's dozens of countries that have civilian nuclear programs. What they do is the nuclear material is imported under international inspection, supervision. It's processed and then it's removed under international supervision. Iran can have that. But we all know the truth, that what they're interested in is a nuclear weapon. That's been terminated. They spent $500 billion on their nuclear program, and that's been terminated. There's no way on this side of the moon where they're going to be able to reconstitute that in the coming years. It's going to take decades and decades for them to be able to reconstitute what they had, and that's a result of the closest collaboration that's ever existed between the United States and Israel. There's never been this level of collaboration.
So are you saying then that the threat of a nuclear-armed Iran has been eliminated?
The threat of a nuclear Iran has been eliminated for now, no question about that. There's issues about, for example, material they may have hid. I mean, Iran is a bad actor. And Iran, in terms of the Iranian government, hasn't gone away. Their intentions are still there. If they can operate as a bad actor on the international stage, they will. Because they talk about us being the little Satan, the United States being the big Satan. They have a battle with Western civilization. They're out for the Judeo-Christian civilization. They want to terminate our civilization. Israel is the extension of Western civilization. It's an extension of the Judeo-Christian civilization in the Middle East. That's why they're so intent first on eradicating Israel, because Israel is a segue to eradicating the rest of Western civilization. They're a bad actor.
Well, I do want to bring this back to our viewers, specifically here in central Indiana. Is it safe for Americans to visit Israel right now?
It's not only safe, it's the best thing I recommend, because it's a life-transforming experience. You come to where Jesus walked, you come to where the Bible was created, you come to where the prophecies foresaw that the day would come when the Jewish people would come back to their homeland. This is a organic connection between the people of Israel and the land of Israel, and it's happening right now. There are those who are opposed to it, there are those who feel very uncomfortable about it, but you know the amazing thing about the people of Indiana, when they come to visit Israel, they don't need to buy a tour book. They just got to take their Bible with them.
Right. Michael Leiter is the ambassador of Israel to the United States. Mr. Ambassador, thank you for coming in today.
Good to be with you. Thank you, Garrett.
Thank you. Coming up, Indiana's best political team tackles the data center debate here in central Indiana. Welcome back to All Indiana Politics as we welcome in two members of Indiana's best political team, Republican Whitley Yates and Democrat Lindsay Haake. Welcome back to you both.
Thank you.
I want to begin with the interview we just heard from the Israeli ambassador. This question is for both of you. What does the ambassador's visit to Indiana say about the importance Indiana places on its ties to Israel and vice versa? I should point out, Israel has some trade ties to Israel, but they're not in our top 25. Whitley, we'll start with you.
I think we've seen time and time again with even Governor Haake having very strong ties with Israel and building those relationships. And I would also say with the current investment that the federal government has not only with Israel, but in helping them, I think it would be incumbent upon the leaders in this state to also continue to build those relationships.
Lindsay, how about you? How do you read this?
So this is the first visit since 2015 that we've had from the Israeli ambassador to the U.S. Obviously, that's a big deal. Having such a high-level leader here from any country, I would argue, would be a big deal for Indiana. That said, it was kind of an economic visit. You know, I know he made time to be with you that night, but he also met with the Jewish community, but he also next day headed up to South Bend, as he mentioned earlier in the A block on the visit to AM General. So yeah, this is a huge deal for Indiana. I would argue that every employer is, you know, a pretty big deal for Indiana. I don't know the details behind the AM General deal. I don't know how much money it was or how many jobs it supports. I'm not briefed on that. But this does show that the strong pro-Israel alliance here in Indiana is healthy, and that we're supporting, frankly, a ton of jobs here in Indiana, not just the defense jobs that we are speaking to from Monday's visit, but also the larger goals for Indiana's economic improvement and progress.
So let's turn to some much more local politics. The Indianapolis Metropolitan Development Commission rezoned land for a data center despite pretty significant opposition from a lot of people who live there. And the Lebanon City Council also is about to vote on a data center there as well. Lindsay, can our power grid handle all these data centers?
Well, I think the conversation needs to be larger than just that. I think it's, first of all, do consumers need to bear the brunt of paying for these data centers? Absolutely not. But that wasn't the most opposition that was voiced on Monday's, or excuse me, I apologize, at the MDC hearing in Indy. And then, of course, I wasn't able to watch the Plan Commission meeting up in Lebanon. But obviously that moved forward too. I think that will now face the City Council vote, you said. And we now have also another vote yet on the MDC, on the Indianapolis Franklin Township data center as well. I would also hearken everyone's caution on these. Data centers use more power than every single user right now. There was a report released where it showed earlier in November 2024 when Citizens Action Coalition called for a moratorium on data centers in Indiana. This report showed that all power dedicated towards the data centers in Indiana would be even larger than the entire demand from every single residential customer in Indiana already. So that's a lot of power. Can the grid handle that? Not sure that's the question we need to be asking. Should we, is the question we should be answering. And that is something that needs to be answered by the IURC in addition to these local communities as well.
Whitley, these data centers face a lot of local opposition and concerns over the infrastructure, like Lindsay just mentioned, but also over transparency. Are local officials paying close enough attention to the concerns that people living near these proposed data centers have?
I don't think so. And I do want to stress that data centers are pretty new to us. When it comes to housing them, when it comes to building them here. And so we are in basically uncharted territory, but we do have the data that suggests how badly the data centers will impact the grid. And if the grid is not up to snuff or up to standard to be able to support the residential customers, the commercial customers, as well as the data center customers, who's going to bear the brunt of the improvements of the grid? And it's usually the customers like us. And so I do think the elected officials, as well as the regulatory commission, and all of the players really need to be at the table to work this situation out.
I got about a minute left here. I want to briefly turn to redistricting. We saw all 7 of Indiana's Republican U.S. House members endorse a special session. Whitley, do you see this moving the needle at all in terms of the governor or the state legislature?
No, I don't. I think that they did what was necessary of them and what is expected of them. I don't necessarily believe that they believe that this would be beneficial for them, but I think that they're doing what is in line with what's expected from them from the Trump administration.
Lindsay, got about 30 seconds.
Sure.
where do you see this going?
Yeah, I mean, this is obvious. Indiana is playing a role in national politics in a way that it really doesn't usually, which is interesting. But this is, you've asked the age-old question, you know, where are we on redistricting? What's going to happen? Are we going to have a special session? I don't think anybody knows right now. I don't necessarily believe that there is that the thermometer has been taken really from leadership in a way that's meaningful, but we'll have to see, and hopefully the redistricting
Lindsay,
will go.
Unfortunately, we're out of time, so we'll have to leave it there. Thank you both for coming in. We'll be right back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for All Indiana Politics. We'll be back here next Sunday morning at 9:30. You can hear my full interview with the Israeli ambassador on the All Indiana Politics podcast. It's online at wishtv.com. Have a great rest of your weekend.
From Wish TV, this is All Indiana Politics Podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network. Watch All Indiana Politics live Sunday mornings at 9:30 on Wish TV and at wishtv.com. Subscribe to this podcast and listen weekly here on the All Indiana Podcast Network. And be sure to discover even more great podcasts at allindianapodcastnetwork.com.